We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 33b. The Gemara continues a statement from Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai says, "Ein Talmud Chacham Rashoy Lamod Mipnei Rabo." A Talmud Chacham is not allowed to stand in front of his Rebbe. Ela Shachris v'Yarvis, only in the morning and in the evening. Kedei shelo yechavodo meruba michvod shamayim. That way, his kavod, the honor that's being given to the Rebbe, is not greater than the honor that is given to heaven. Rashi says, "Michvod shamayim sharei pnei yotzro ina mekabel ela Shachris v'Yarvis," because you only greet the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, in the morning and the evening. Hilkach misha omen mipnei Rabo Shachris. Therefore, if somebody's already stood before his Rebbe at Shachris, eno rashay lamon miponav ela arvis. He's not allowed to stand again, except when the evening comes. And the Gemara continues, Meseches, we have the following question. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, we said earlier, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Minayin lezaken shelo yatriach. How do we know that an elder shouldn't burden someone and he should try to go in a different direction so people don't have to stand? Talmud lomar zaken v'yaresa. The pasuk says zaken v'yaresa. The elder also has to fear God. And the Gemara says, V'yamrit shachris v'yarvis bilvad. Now, if you say that the standing up only applies in the morning and the evening, amai lo nitrach, why shouldn't the elder cause somebody a bother to have to stand up for him? It's just the morning and the evening. And chiyuvu, that's an obligation to stand up for him twice, in the morning and the evening. Elulav, rather than that, kuliyom, it means that the entire day, anytime the elder passes by, you have to stand up. And that's why Rav Shimon ben Elazar says that the elder shouldn't be a burden on everyone, that they should all be standing up for him all of the time. And the Gemara says, lo, no, that's not what it means. Liolam shachris v'yarvis bilvad. Really, the obligation is only in the morning and the evening. V'afilu hachi, and nevertheless, kama de'efshar le lo nitrach. As much as possible, the elder should not be a burden on others. He should try to avoid putting himself in a situation where people have to stand up for him. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rebbe Elazar says, Kol Talmud Chacham shein omid mipnei Rabo. Any Talmud Chacham that doesn't stand up in front of his Rebbe, Nikra Rasha, he is called wicked, ve'eno marich yamim, he won't live a long life, ve'talmudo mishtakeach, and that which he has learned, he will forget. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, v'tov lo yela Rasha v'lo yarich yamim, that for the wicked, he won't have good, he won't have long life, katzel asher einenu yore, milifneho elokim, like the one who doesn't fear God. And so the Gemara says, Mo razu eini yodei amau. Now it talks here about not fearing. We don't know what this fear is. Kishu omer v'yareisa me'elokecha. When it says v'yareisa me'elokecha, hare mo razu kima. So you see that the fear that we're talking about is the rising, is the standing up. But the Gemara says, V'ema moras ribis or moras mishkalas. But how do you know? There are other places where it says fear. There's fear by the mitzvah not to charge interest, and also by weights, that you have to use proper weights and measures. How do we know that the fear we're talking about over here is standing up, is giving honor? And the Gemara says, Rebbe Elazar pnei gomer. Rebbe Elazar actually was learning from the word pnei. It says milifneiho elokim in the pasuk, and it says mipnei seva takum, and so therefore we understand that when it says over here milifnei, it's referring to standing up. And the Gemara continues, they have the following question, Benovahu Rabo, let's say the person is his son, but it's also his Rebbe. Mahu Lamod, what's the halacha? Does he stand up, Mipnei Aviv? Does the son stand up for the father, even though he is the Rebbe of the father? And the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here the following proof, the Amr le Shmuel le Rav Yehuda, because Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinina, big-toothed one, Kum Mekame Avach, stand up in front of your father. So you see, even though he was the Rebbe of his father, he still had to stand up. And the Gemara says, Shani Rav Yecheskel, the Gemara says it's different over there, because there the father of Rav Yehuda was Rav Yecheskel, the Baal Maisim Havin. Rav Yecheskel was somebody who did great things, and therefore it's appropriate, the Afilu Mar Shmuel Nami, Koyim Mekame, even Shmuel himself would stand up in front of Rav Yecheskel. But the Gemara says, Elamai Kamarle, but the Gemara says, if that's the case, so what's he even saying to him? It's obvious you have to stand up. Why is he even telling Rav Yehuda you have to stand up? If he was telling him that a son has to stand up for his father, even though the son is the Rebbe, so that would be something that we're learning from there. But what are we learning over here? And the Gemara says, Hachi Kamarle, what he was saying to him was as follows, Zimnin da'asi me'achorai, sometimes your father will come from behind me, Kum at mi kamei, you should stand up for him, V'lo teichosh liyikra didi, and you shouldn't be concerned for my honor. And the Gemara continues, they had the following question, Benovahu Rabo, let's say his son is also his Rebbe, Mao sheyamod aviv mipanav, what's the halacha in terms of his father standing up for his son? And the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here the following proof, the Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, because Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said, Ani eini kedai lamod mipnei b'ni, ela mishum kvod beis nasi. Really, I would not stand before my son except for the fact that he's married into the house of the nasi, and therefore for the respect of the house of the nasi, that's why I stand up. And the Gemara says, Taima da'ano Rabbe. So the reasoning, what Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is saying is, I can't stand up for him because I'm his Rebbe. Ha'iu Rabboy, but if he would be my Rebbe, ko'im nimikameh. So then Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi was saying that I would stand up in front of my son. And you see that a father does stand up in front of his son if the son is his Rebbe. And the Gemara says that's not necessarily what Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi was saying. Hachi Kamar, this is what Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi was saying. Ani eni kedai lamod mipnei b'ni. I'm not able to stand up in front of my son, va'afilu hu Rabboy, even if he was my Rebbe, to anu avua, because I'm his father, and a father shouldn't stand up for a son. Elam mishum kavod beis nasi, it's only because of the honor of the house of the nasi, that's why I stand up in front of him. And the Gemara continues, who they ask the following question, Rochav kimahalech dami olo. Let's say the Rebbe is riding on an animal, so in that case, is it the same as walking? When a Rebbe walks by, you have to stand up. Or do we say, no, that's considered like sitting down, and therefore it's not necessary to stand up? The Gemara says, Amar Abaya, Abaya says, Tashma, come and hear the following proof. The Brisa says, Tameh Yoshev Tachas Ilan. Let's say the person who is Tameh, this is a person who has Saras. If he's sitting under the tree, the halach is there is Tumas Ohel when someone has Saras, but that's only if the person who's Tameh is sitting. So if the person who's Tameh is sitting under the tree, Vitar Omed, and the person who's Tar is standing under the tree, Tameh, so then that Tahor person becomes Tameh because he gets Tumah through Tumas Ohel. Tameh Omed Tachas Ilan. However, let's say the person who is Tameh is standing under the tree, Vitar Yoshev, and the person who's Tar is sitting, Tahor, so in that case he's tar, because again there's no tumas ohel if the person with saras is standing. And if the person who's tameh sits down, so then the person who's tar does become tameh, as we said, because of tumas ohel. And the Gemara then says v'chein be'even hamenugas, and the same thing is true by an evan, by a stone that has saras. It's exactly the same. It all depends on whether the person holding the stone is standing or whether he is sitting. And the Gemara says, "V'yamar Rav Nachman bar Kohen." Rav Nachman bar Kohen says, "Zoso meris." This proves Rachav kimahalech dami, that the person who is riding, it's as if he is walking. Shma Minon. And the Gemara says, indeed, this is a proof. And the reasoning over here is that the Evan Hamenugas, it takes on whatever the person holding it is doing. If the person holding the stone is standing, so then it's considered to be standing up, and there's no Tumas Ohel. And if the person holding it is sitting, then it's considered to be sitting down, and there is Tumas Ohel. And the same would be true by someone riding an animal. If someone is riding an animal, so it's whatever the animal is doing. If the animal is walking, so then the person is considered like he's walking, and therefore you see Rachav K'mahalech Dami. And the Gemara says, they had the following question, Mahu Lamod Mibnei Sefer Torah. What would the halacha be in terms of standing in front of a Sefer Torah? In other words, we just said that if a Chacham is riding, so then it's considered like he's walking, you have to stand up for him. So what if a Sefer Torah is being carried? So there also, do we say you have to stand up, or is the Sefer Torah considered to be at rest? And the Gemara says, Rav Chilkiah, Rav Simon, Rav Elazar Amri, Rav Chilkiah and Rav Simon and Rav Elazar, they all say Kal V'chomer, that we make a Kal V'chomer. Mipnei Lomdeha Omdim, if in front of those who learn the Torah, let's say again, a Chacham is riding on an animal, you have to stand up for that Chacham. So Mipanel Lo Kal Shekain, so certainly the Torah itself, if that's being carried by someone, certainly the Torah itself, you have to stand up as well. Rabbi Eloi and Rav Yaakov bar Zavdi have a Yasvi. Rabbi Eloi and Rav Yaakov bar Zavdi were sitting. Cholev v'azol Rabbi Shimon bar Abba v'kama mikamei. Rabbi Shimon bar Abba was passing by, and they stood for him. Amar Lahu, he said to them, Chada, number one, da'atun chakime, that you guys are chachamim. V'yano chaver, and I'm a chaver. I'm not even as great as you. V'yod, and further, klum Torah omedes mipnei lomdel. Does the Torah itself stand up for those who learn the Torah? Meaning, if you're involved in actually learning Torah, you shouldn't be standing up for me at that moment. And the Gemara says, Savar Lok Rebbe Lazar, he held like Rebbe Lazar, the Amr Rebbe Lazar, because Rebbe Lazar says, Ein Talmud Chacham Rashoy Lamon Mipnei Rabo, a Talmud Chacham is not allowed to stand up for his Rebbe, B'shah Sha'osek B'Torah, while he's learning Torah. So that's why he was saying, you shouldn't have stood up for me while you were learning Torah. But the Gemara then comments, Layat Allah Abaya, Abaya cursed what Rebbe Lazar said, meaning he said, you shouldn't follow that. We shouldn't say that a Talmud does not stand up for his Rebbe when he's learning Torah. Rather, the Talmud Chacham should stand up for his Rebbe regardless. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The pasuk says, "V'hibitu acharei Moshe ad bo ha'oel." It says that they looked after Moshe until he got to his tent. The entire nation would look at him. And the Gemara says, "Rabbi Ami v'Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha." This is a machlokas between Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Chadamar lignai. One says that it's lignai. The fact that they were looking at him in a negative way. We'll see Rashi how Rashi explains that. The Chadamar l'shevach, and the other one says that it was in a praiseworthy manner. Man damar lignai kidisa. The one who says that it was in a negative manner. manner. That's as was explained, and again Rashi will explain. And Mandamar l'Shevach, the one that says it's for praise, Amar Chizkiya says, Amar li Rabbi Chanina Bereid Rabbi Avo, Amar Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Chanina, the son of Rabbi Avo, said to me that Rabbi Avo said, Amar Rav Avdime de Min Chaifa, that Rav Avdime de Min Chaifa said, Chacham over Omed Milafan of Dalet Amos. What they were following was as follows. The halach is that if a Chacham passes by, you have to stand in front of him, Dalet Amos, V'kevan Sha'avar Dalet Amos Yoshev, and once he leaves your Dalet Amos, then you sit down. Av Bezin over Omed Milfan of Melo Einav. Now in Av Bezin, if he's passing by, the moment you see him, you have to stand up, even if he's farther away than Dalet Amos. V'chevan sha'avar Dalet Amos, and then when he passes by and he leaves your Dalet Amos, Yoshev, then you sit down. Nasi over, if the Nasi is passing by, Omin Milafana Melo Einav, again, when you see him, you have to stand up. Ve'eno Yoshev at sheyeshev b'mechom, and you can't sit down until he sits in his place. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, V'hibitu acharei Moshe ad bo ha'ola, it says they looked after Moshe until he went to his tent. So they were following this halacha, they were waiting for him to arrive in his place in order to sit down. And Rashi explains, Torah medis mipnei lomdeh, should the Torah stand up for those who learn it? Bitmiyah, that would be a wonder. Lefisha asukim edvar halacha, the point is, Rabbi Shimon bar Abba was saying to them, you're learning dvar halacha, hayukaru lehu ledidhu Torah atzma, so he called them the Torah itself, uledidei, and he referred to himself, kari lomdeh, he referred to himself as lomdeh, and that's why he said they shouldn't have stood up, they're in the middle of learning Torah, they shouldn't stand up for him. Layat Allah Abaya cursed this halacha, meaning ahach de Rabbi Elazar, he cursed the halacha that was taught by Rebbe Elazar. Again, Rebbe Elazar said a Talmud Chacham should not stand up for his Rebbe while he's learning. Kol man detzayisli. Abai said anyone who listens to that should be cursed. Kiddushin, and again we said that there's a negative explanation of V'hibitu acharei Moshe mishum dedvar megunahu lo ratza lefarsima, because it was something that was negative. The Gemara doesn't even want to spell it out. V'harei mefurish b'medrash Rabbi Tanchuma. It's actually found in the Medrash Rabbi Tanchuma. Ru'u kama ovim shokav kama tzavaru shamein hakol mishalanu. They were actually looking at Moshe and they said, look how thick his thighs are, look how fat his neck is, it's all from us. Everything he has taken from the nation. That was the negative interpretation of why they were looking at Moshe. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Kol mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama v'chulu, any mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama, men are chayiv and women are potter. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Eizuhi mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama. What are examples of mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama? Sukkah, v'lulav, shofar, v'tzitzis. Those are all examples of mitzvahs aseh shehazman grama. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Daled Amud Aleph.